Will was supposed to become a murderer. Steve was expected to be nothing but the biggest douchebag on the planet. And the Duffers wanted to name the show totally differently. Say goodbye to the main cast after Season 1 and move on to 2020s. Hi, I'm Tim, and here are 10 times Stranger Things might have gone totally different. 906 boys and 307 girls had their chances to become a part of the iconic gang. So it wasn't so clear from the very beginning who would become the leading characters. And if you think Millie Bobby Brown was an easy choice, well, you'd be wrong, as 246 girls auditioned for the role of 11. Plus, Millie herself almost quit acting before she landed the part in Stranger Things. She was devastated with a recent rejection for the movie Logan and started to lose her faith. The Duffer Brothers were extremely demanding for the role of 11, but turns out that none other than Stephen King played a key role in the final decision. The master of horror saw Brown on the BBC show Intruders and he loved her. So much that Stephen King wrote a tweet about Millie, calling her terrific. Finding that out, the Duffers chose Brown right away. But the problems didn't stop there. The Duffers needed Elle to look like she doesn't fit in this world, and so shaving her head was a must. The thing is that no 11-year-old girl wants to shave their hair. And that was the case for Millie and her mother, who was worried that the shaved look would cost Millie other roles. Other roles sounds pretty funny now, right? But back then, Millie was very nervous. Fortunately, it was the time when Mad Max Fury Road was something everybody talked about. And so the Duffers showed Millie a picture of Charlize Theron as Furiosa and asked Millie, does she not look badass? And only when Millie imagined that she's going to look badass exactly like Charlize, she agreed to cut her curls. Perhaps that's what Millie was thinking of while performing her iconic mad look? Gaten Matarazzo, on the contrary, made the Duffers change Dustin's image entirely, copying the actor's natural look. According to the Duffer Brothers, Dustin was written simply as a nerd. That is all, nothing special. But when they saw Gaten's audition tape, they fell in love with the boy's charm and fulfilled Dustin's character with Gaten's specific traits. By the way, the iconic purl/growl was all Gaten's idea as well, which actually grew out of his Chewbacca impression. Another actor who captured the Duffers' hearts was Joe Keery, but not from the very beginning. He made the audition good enough to play, as the Duffers recall it, the biggest douchebag on the planet. Steve Harrington had to break up with Nancy already mid-season 1, and no one could imagine he would reconcile with Nancy at the end. Perhaps it was Joe Keery's hair, or simply his charisma that made the character so lovable, that the Duffers had no other choice but to create Steve his own character's arc. That is how the showrunners started to think that maybe Steve was not a douchebag after all. He's not the perfect guy, sure, but perhaps he's in with the wrong crowd, and his feelings for Nancy made him a better kind of guy. So they let Steve be a part of the gang in Season 1. But Season 2 came in and they had no idea how to fit in Steve, especially since he was not with Nancy anymore. And so the Duffers thought, who else is lonely and could be somehow connected to Steve? Any thoughts? At the same time, Dustin needed help because none of his friends were around. And that is how the famous Bromance came around. And we can enjoy this heartwarming scene when the two are walking down the railroad tracks talking about girls. And how odd is it realizing that this bromance was only written in to give Steve something to do? Another quick match for the role was Dacre Montgomery. But nobody expected he would be that reckless, even Dacre himself. It was a very weird day for the actor, and he felt like he didn't want to simply go through the lines for his audition. And so, right in the scene where he tries to run down Max's new friends, he added a Duran Duran song, then started dancing shirtless, and as it turns out, at the very moment he was wearing nothing but a G-string. Saying, and just go for it, to just have that moment of freedom and be able to show them that I can have that uninhibited freedom, and I was like, okay, what better way to do that than to oil myself up, put on a G-string, and yeah. You didn't mishear that, he also oiled himself up. That was crazy. Actually, Dacre didn't really expect it to work. He thought that either he was never going to work again after the showrunners simply banned him, or perhaps someone would find Dacre funny enough to let him join the project. Thank God the Duffers have a sense of humor. I've watched thousands of auditions now, and it's by far the most bonkers that I've witnessed, Ross Duffer said. Another audition tape that surprised many was Finn's. I'm Finn, I'm sick, and I'm 12 years old, he reveals in audio tape, simply sitting in his bedroom and filming the video on his phone. But that worked out just fine, unlike the initial plan concerning Mike's look. One of the initial ideas was that Mike Wheeler was supposed to have a birthmark on his cheek. It was even a serious story point, but the Duffers eventually removed it because they wanted the kids to be as natural as possible. Another thing that might have gone totally different is that Noah Schnapp originally auditioned to play Mike Wheeler. What do you think about that? But seems that everything worked out for the best. And that's not all. Will was supposed to turn into a real killer in Season 2. Possessed by the Mind Flayer, Evil Will was meant to show up far earlier in the season and kill Bob. It must have happened in episode 3, during that early car scene, when Bob is giving Will advice about the shadow monster. As the showrunners explained, Will just straight up murders Bob in that car. Shocking, right? Yeah, Bob was never going to be the hero. Fortunately, the plan was scrapped due to Aston's incredible charm. Plus, Sean Astin fought hard for his character. He made the Duffers rethink Bob's destiny not once but twice. Can you imagine that the Duffers wanted to say goodbye to Bob so quickly with no strings attached? Awful! But Astin was behind his character dying in an extremely dramatic and pretty violent way. We were not going to make it as memorable as we did, and then he kept talking about Jaws and Quint being ripped apart. And I was like, alright man, we'll do it, said Ross. And that is how we have the scenes where the Demodogs violently pull Bob apart, and Joyce goes through a personal hell, while seeing it all with their eyes. In the case of Winona Ryder, it was the showrunners who worked damn hard to get her to play the role of Will's mother. The thing is, after Ryder's very turbulent and stormy youth, the star was tired of big projects and only said yes to some minor movies, which she was really interested in. And plus, the actress had never played in a TV show before. She didn't even know what a streaming platform was. But the Duffers dreamed of having Winona from the very beginning, and so they wrote her a very careful invitation. The answer they got surprised them a lot, as the Edward Scissorhands star simply replied with a "I liked it." The very next day, she met the Duffers, and they spoke for more than 3 hours, and not really about the character or the show. They were just getting to know each other. As you now know, it went well, and eventually Winona joined the crew. And the last thing we need to reveal is that the whole story could have been entirely different. You should know that the alleged mysterious government experiment really took place in the early 80s and involved kidnapping kids from Long Island to experiment on them. It was called the Montauk Project, and that is what inspired the idea of the show. But as you can see, the story happened in Montauk, and that is where the Duffers wanted to film originally. Matt Duffer explained that there was one more reason why they wanted the show set in Montauk. One of their favorite movies, Jaws, was also shot there. But budget cuts resulted in moving to Atlanta and moonlighting it as the fictional town of Hawkins, Indiana. Wait, there's more. The Stranger Things that we know almost didn't come to be. After defeating the monster in Season 1, the Duffers thought it would be enough of the monster-centric flash of the 1980s nostalgia. So they wanted to progress through the 1990s, 2000s, 2010s, and then 2020, leaving our favorite gang in the 80s. But as always, the charm of the cast did not let the Duffers end with actors on such short terms. What has surprised you the most from our story? Share with us in the comments. And as always, thanks for being awesome.